suddenly it just, you were sick like all the time.
I was trying so many things. I was researching diets after diets.
That one pill was like
500
over 500 a month.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna have so much faith. The next morning, I said, I'm gonna be healed, and I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna drink this cup of coffee and nothing's gonna happen and the Lord is gonna come through for me.
I also remember some of the research you did into different healing methods.
Oh, please stop.
Anyway, we won't talk about them, but they're funny to talk about now.
This week, I got some exciting news I still can hardly believe is true, and I wanted to share that with you all, and it involves my health journey. I've been through quite a bit, we've been through quite a bit, I should say, over the past 7 years. And I just wanted to go back and rewind, share it with some of you that if you've never heard it before, and share it from a perspective. I wanted to have him along to share his perspective, as I called him a support person and he laughed in my face. That's what he is, he's my support person. Anyway.
I hope more, but yeah.
Well, and this, you know what I mean.
Right.
When someone is sick, the person is there to help them through it. And they have to go through a lot, and it's hard on them and the mental strain that they have on them. So I'd like to have him on to share his perspective as well. Just a little bit of the journey that we went through over the past 7 years. And if you haven't heard before, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and we'll jump into that a little bit more. But yeah, I'm just gonna be opening up about my health journey and then share some of the news that we got this week. We just got done filming our video podcast for our membership group, all talking about Christmas and our traditions, so I thought I'd nab him and keep doing here for the main YouTube channel. And before we jump into it, I did want to let you know, today's Black Friday. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving yesterday and are full of turkey and stuffing and all the things. But we are running a sale for Mama Java coffee. We're doing 15% off all coffees. If you've never tried our coffee before, Mama Java is a brand that we started because we believe moms deserve better coffee. So it's Mama Java, and everything's sort of mom themed. We've built an incredible community. So thankful for you guys. Every bag that's sold, $1 gets donated to Water for Good for a water crisis. I'm not gonna be diving into all that. But anyway, Messy Bun is one of the most popular sellers. Just popping up a few reviews. I've never done that, I don't think, on this channel hardly. Elsie Miller wrote, Mama Java is my new favorite coffee. The Messy Bun is perfection. Thank you for great coffee and great service. It's the first time I tried. I keep purchasing tastes like a coffee from a coffee shop. My favorite is Messy Bun. We'll continue to buy and enjoy. I love the flavor of Messy Bun. The packaging makes me smile every time I see it on the counter. I'm a total mom with Messy Bun, so I love it even more. After being a loyal customer of Seattle-based coffee company for over 10 years, I find Messy Bun to be a new favorite. Delicious.
You missed Glenn Rife. He had no heartburn after 4 cups.
We've had a lot of people tell us, people that have had stomach issues, and say that they went away after they started drinking our coffee, which is amazing, and I can testify to that as well. There's one more review that always tickles me when I read it. This is from Emily Rogers. She said, I have to tell myself to rate this review. I'm a mail carrier, and one of my customers on my route was getting this awesome smelling package every month. By the smell of it, even through all the packaging, I could tell it had to be some great coffee. So I Googled the sender's name, and that's how I found Mama Java. Messy Bun coffee is amazing. The aroma just puts you in a good mood. The taste is smooth, no bitterness whatsoever. I love their mission too. I will be a returning customer for sure. So if you haven't tried it yet, now's the perfect time, 15% off all of our coffees, and if you purchase an order over 75 bucks, you get free shipping. It's roasted and shipped on the same day, so mwah, so good. All right, enough of a plug. The big news that I'm planning to share at the end of this video is huge news for me, and I'm just so excited to share it. So we're gonna back up and go back to the beginning. 7 years ago, I'm probably doing most of the talking here until we get to the more of the other questions, but please interject anytime. You can interrupt me or whatever if you have something you remember. 7 years ago,
a little more, because Xander was a couple months old.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always kind of embarrassing talking about some of this on a public platform, but I feel like it helps other people with health issues not to feel so alone. So I did start bleeding when I was going to the bathroom, and we were worrying, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse. It started soon after, a few months after he was born. By that fall, it was getting so bad that I pretty much was housebound. I was constantly running to the bathroom, bleeding a lot, and we were running to different doctors, right? I'm forgetting how many different things we were doing
Well,
before I actually got a test.
At first, I remember, we were really scared that it was
cancer
or something. Yeah.
It just takes a long time till they finally get you through to the right places and all the things. But finally, I got tested. I went to a gastroenterologist. Is that how you say it?
I don't know.
And then they diagnosed me with severe ulcerative colitis, which is in your large intestine. You have ulcers, and depending where, some people just have it in certain spots. Other people have it in all the sections. So it's like big bloody ulcers, inflammation, and basically it makes it so that you're bleeding a lot. You have a lot of stomach pain. As soon as you eat, it hurts. You often have to run to the bathroom. It just makes it...
You're very susceptible for cancer too, aren't
yes.
you?
Yeah. It's just a lot of horrible things, and you basically can't absorb your food. People usually lose a ton of weight on it. They can die quickly. Some people that are very severe, they have to be in the hospital. One of the worst things is it feels like it hampers your life because you have to run to the bathroom all day long. You have to be close by. Just going to town and shopping gives the utmost anxiety. Like just the thought of getting in a car and being away from a bathroom, just even driving 5 minutes if you can go to town, like just super anxiety. Shopping in a store, if you're at one end of the store and suddenly you have to use the bathroom, you can hardly make it to the back end. So you can just imagine, it's like one of the most horrible feelings because you feel so out of control of yourself, and it's one of those things that it just dehumanizes you as a person.
Right. People don't understand.
No.
They just don't understand.
No. And you can never understand. It's just like any situation in life. And until you've walked it in someone else's shoes, you don't understand how difficult it is until you've been there. And so it was extremely life-changing. We went from being a young married couple. We were married for 4 years, right, until before Xander was born. Mm-hmm. So we were kind of in our honeymoon stage for quite a while. Had a really good 4 years of marriage, and then I got pregnant, and that was kind of bumpy as far as just navigating that, hormones, relationships, and then we had our son. Things were going well, but it was still an adjustment with having our firstborn. And then shortly after, I was diagnosed with this horrible disease, and they told me it's chronic. I can never cure it. I will always live with it. It was just a pretty dark time.
It was. Well, it was kind of a double hit because Xander was still a baby. He wasn't even half a year old yet. We weren't getting babysitters. He was a little young to go out to a restaurant. I think we did that once or twice.
Yeah.
But
before I was sick.
I mean, when you're young married, we'd go walk along the waterfront there in Harrisburg, or we'd just
go out for a weekend quickly, or
even just an evening where we would, just go see this or do that. You get used to that, and most couples, they have their first child, and so they really have to dial that back. But it kind of comes back. But you got sick about the same time. Suddenly it was like the things we used to do to reconnect, we just couldn't do anymore.
Mm-hmm. And my personal love language definitely is quality time together, and suddenly we weren't having that as much in the ways that we used to.
Right.
So that was definitely an adjustment. So back to health, I worked with the doctor. They put me on medication, put me on steroids, high dose of prednisone. And did I start turning around? Soon after the prednisone, I felt prednisone usually knocks things out pretty quickly. Yeah, you did. It's a steroid, isn't it? It is. Prednisone was. So you had all kinds of energy. I remember you were I couldn't working sleep. Late into the night, I could not. Steroids are horrible. Yeah. You might have to help me with the timelines here, but basically from there on out, I would get into a flare, and then I would manage to somehow get out of it with these prednisone, steroids, and then I'd be out of it for a few months, and then I'd be right back into another one. Well, I remember, it was pretty much, you were really sick in the fall of 2017, then you were better for a couple months, and then into 2018 a little bit. Yeah, and then the summer hit. It seemed like the heat and the stress of summer really triggered it for you. Yeah, and I couldn't, that was the one I could hardly pull out of for a while, right? Was that the summer we went to Paris?
We went to, well, in September,
fall.
but yeah, you hit the prednisone really hard.
Yeah. So after I'd gotten out, we were like, we love to travel, and we were like, hey, we found some really cheap tickets to Paris. It was just Paris was never on our bucket list, but it was something to look forward to and be like, hey, if I'm better, sorry, then we can go. And
they were like $200 tickets.
Yeah,
they were extremely cheap.
And we had points on our credit card, and we went on a really cheap vacation. And that was the first time we got to go away together without our son.
Right.
We left him behind. It was a super fun trip, but I was still sick on that trip. Just so. I remember, that's horrible. That was the time I booked seats right next to the bathroom, right? It was awful. But anyway, leading up to it, I just didn't think I was going to get better for this trip. And I was trying to get out of this flare, and I couldn't. I was bleeding. It just went on for months. And then I just started hitting the prednisone because I was determined to go on this trip, I think is how it went. So I was living on prednisone, and we went to Paris. And over that time, I was so paranoid about traveling. This still wasn't at my worst, though. I know I wasn't at my worst.
No.
It wasn't one of my worst flares. But I had booked, I was so nervous about needing to be close to a bathroom that I had booked seats right next to the bathroom and thinking that would get me there quicker.
Seats that don't recline. And this was a flight, which it was an Icelandic airline, so we had a layover in Iceland. Still long flights, and there we were, not
And then we'd smell the
recline.
bathroom, and the doors would fly open, and everyone was there just right at our seats in the line. Anyway, it was a night. It was ugh. And I had paid extra because I wanted to pick seats.
Yeah.
Anyway, those were the days. That trip, I was sick, but we still had a really good time. It wasn't terrible. I was living on prednisone. But anyway, moving on. That was the fall of 2018, right?
Yeah. Then you would have got, same thing, you sort of got better
for a few
in
months.
the spring, and then remember we went to Verity's graduation.
Oh yeah.
And then that was in 2019, and you really that was rough. One thing we've noticed too is like you can go through stress, and you don't pay for it till a couple weeks later.
Yeah,
it's weird, but.
And I've heard my brother say the same. He has Crohn's. And I've heard different people say, like, your body goes through a fight and flight, and it's, like, surviving, and it's fine. And then as soon as you're done and it lets down, then your body's like, okay, now I can relax, and I'm going to heal, basically. And then it goes into your autoimmune condition and overdrive. Okay, so that was 2018. Then going into 2019, that's when I hit one of my worst flares. Now, this whole time, I would only go a few months being okay and then back into a lot longer of a time of a flare. And each flare, I think, kept getting worse and longer and harder. And 2019 was the worst.
Yeah.
Over your dad's funeral, that was
bad,
probably the worst.
Yeah.
Long story short, I was trying so many things. I was researching diets after diets. I was trying to go to the doctor. She's like, well, maybe you should try this medicine. Maybe you should try that medicine because the one I was on wasn't working. And I couldn't keep living on these prednisone steroid pills to get me out of flares because it's super hard on you. But then she would say, you could maybe try this medicine, but you can't get pregnant on it. And I'm like, well, I don't want to get reliant on a medicine I can't be pregnant on. And then she'd say, well, there's a test they're trying. You could either try this test, but you don't know if you're going to get a placebo or a real one. I'm like, I'm not really interested in that either. Another option was infusions, which is, to me, just sounds like the most awful thing ever. Terrible unhealthy. You have to go in every 6 weeks and they pump you full of something. These infusions that's supposed to last for 6 weeks, and then you go back in again in 6 weeks and they pump you full again through IV and stuff. And I wanted nothing to do with that. And so the doctor eventually said, well, maybe you should consider surgery, which is removing part of your colon and wearing a bag. Most times there's some other types of surgery, and I just freaked out. I'm like, there is no way I'm ready for this. But we were at like rock bottom. I went home. Shall we talk about the anointing?
Yeah. It's in James where it says if there's any sick among you, let the elders of the church come and pray and anoint them with oil. And maybe we should do it more often. I don't know, but I mean, it's a good thing for even peace of mind. Like a lot of people say that just the whole thing of laying it out before the Lord and having people pray over you and stuff is super powerful, even if physically the healing doesn't really come, you know.
We called our church and asked if they would come, and it was one of the most special services, moments, I guess, that we've been in. They came to our house, they sat with us in our living room, they prayed with us, prayed for me. One friend of mine in particular, I just remember it really stood out to me how compassionate she was in her prayer and in her, just everything. And then we had they anointed me. There was just such a peace that came with that. I know that God answers those prayers differently. Not everyone always gets healed. But there was definitely a change after that. It wasn't right away. I remember, I love coffee, right? And coffee and me never really got along well when I'm in a flare. This coffee is a different story. I can drink our coffee and it hardly messes with my stomach compared to others. I can tell the difference as soon as I drink other coffee. But anyway, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have so much faith. The next morning, I said, I'm gonna be healed and I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna drink this cup of coffee and nothing's gonna happen and the Lord is gonna come through for me. And I drank that cup of coffee and yeah. I wasn't healed overnight, so anyway. But it was a really special moment, and I view that time as a turning point in things I found out. I believe that God showed me things. He started healing me and helping us find a way through. And it became a journey, but that was the turning point.
It kind of felt like there was hope. Like
right.
It went to be like, okay, I don't know. It just felt like we could live with it now.
Right.
You know.
And also just the way things started to change after that. But before we jump into that, how was it? Okay, so I just admire you for all you did for me. So Xander was a little baby, especially at the beginning. He was very clingy to me. And I just remember how horrible it was. Like, he would always have to be very close to me. And suddenly, if I would have to run to the bathroom, we have a bathroom upstairs, and I would have to just run. I didn't have time to get him. And then he would go into panic mode because I wasn't around. That was always kind of like that type of thing. Also, over this time, I was just so determined to keep living my life. This is back more at the beginning again. I was so determined that this can't just rob my life. That's when we bought the camper. And that's kind of when this whole YouTube channel started. It's really funny. If you go back, I'm going to link it below. There's a very much skinnier version of me, very different looking version of me. But we bought the Toyota, a little Toyota. We just had a thing for Toyotas, and it was back when the whole van life, camper life thing was in, and you would buy something old and renovate it, and I love DIY projects. That in itself had a lot of marriage tension. The Toyota renovation. But it kind of kept me going, and we had bought this thing, we parked it out in the shop. And I was in a flare over this time, but it was something that I could do. I would run out in the shop and work at it when I could, and then suddenly I'd have to run to the house, and I mean run. I mean, you had to just get back, and it would get kind of stressful because Xander was just this little tyke, and I had to like pick him up and run, and he was heavy. And if I would leave him outside, I mean, he would just go ballistic, and yeah, I just look back at that. It's hard to fathom all that. Like, I don't know if I'd have the get up and go to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, working on that when you're not feeling well and have to, yeah. Anyway.
It was good, though. It really did. It gave you something to do. And, yeah, it's interesting how, your channel back then was kind of had a different feel, but that was sort of documenting that.
That's kind of how I just was fascinated with the documentation of a video. And
probably a few older men are a little disappointed that now it's a mom channel, but
there's definitely different things of anyways, as the flares got worse, like I had like zero energy and I could hardly do housework. Nolan would come home, he would help me do housework, and I would just lay in bed and he would take care of Xander. He was just amazing. The other thing, like I want you to talk into that, like how that felt for you. But the other thing was my medicines and doctor bill. We didn't have insurance, did we? And I don't even know if it would have been covered it then.
Yeah, the Christian healthcare didn't cover your meds.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
And that one pill was like
$500
over $500 a month. So just the one drug.
So. And then we were trying to figure out diet, and a lot of places would recommend, different meats, very much encourage organic, and we just couldn't afford this stuff. And with the meds, there was some months there, it was $1,000 a month, and this was back in 2017, 18,
19, yeah.
When $1,000 was a lot more than it is even now. And I just remember I felt so horrible because he would have to work however long it took you, over a week maybe, to just pay for my meds. And then I had doctor bills. I mean, it was tight there for a while. And then I was wanting to try different supplements and different diets. And I was so much the type of person, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this. And then I'd try it for 3 days. Maybe my pain would get worse and things weren't working. And I'd get frustrated. And I'd be like, this isn't working. And then I'd go on to the next thing, which was horrible. And you would get after me for that. And then I'd get very angry because I'd be like, you don't know what it's like and you have no idea. And we kind of had tension in that too. I'm sure you felt helpless in how to help.
Yeah, I mean, there was that where, there was really, okay, I could, and it helps if you have stuff to do, like, especially if you're a guy, but like in a situation like that, if there's whatever, you can go clean the house or whatever, take care of Xander, like, if there's stuff to do, then at least there's that. But like for us, I mean, we went from, like, suddenly it just, you were sick like all the time, and it didn't feel like we could do anything together. Like we weren't going on trips really. We weren't, well, not even that. Just normal life,
We were just stuck at home. We didn't socialize much because big anxiety thing. And that's another thing we talked about. We feel like that. Okay, I'm already more of an introvert. Like, I love people. I love talking to people. I don't get scared talking to people. Sometimes people think of introverts as that. But I recharge when I'm alone. And if I have to do too much social activity in too short a span of time, I get almost like uptight and tense. And it just drains me. But that time of life made it really bad.
Right.
Right? And I think you pointed that out. And I realized afterward it's true. Like, when we actually came out of that season, I had become so antisocial from being home so much that I literally would almost, I don't know if you could call them anxiety attacks, but almost from being with people. Like, I would be in tears. I would be feeling like short on breath, almost like uptight. Like, I just can't do it. Like, I would like literally be panicking on the way. And it was so weird. And it just came from that season of just not intermingling with people, I guess, and it just being us or what.
I think weird. That was probably definitely part of it. I've developed more compassion for a family that has a sick family member, and yes, I'm very compassionate towards that person who's sick, but I also am compassionate towards the rest of the family, especially if it's, a married person with a spouse. Like, that's a really hard place to be because you're watching the person you love more than anyone else in the world go through something, and you really can only share so much of it with them. Like, you were sick, and especially when there's stuff to do and there's bills that need paid, and like it's not easy, you know?
Yeah.
And so I hopefully I can have more compassion for the family members of someone who's sick too, because oftentimes they get forgotten, and we had a lot of wonderful people with us, people that helped. And
speaking of getting out and doing things, remember in 2020 I have a video, we went to Turks and Caicos on this channel.
All right.
We weren't sure all the way up to it. I was fighting a flare. And I kept telling Troy and Rocky, I don't know if we can do this. And somehow I miraculously pulled out of it before.
Well, 2020 was, so that was the year of COVID. And you never really had a flare all year long. And we had, I still don't even
much stress
don't even like to think about, where this country was 4 years ago, and all of the angst that was going on. But
if we would have known when we went on our trip what was coming, we had went right at the beginning. Anyway, what I was planning to say with that was it was such a euphoric feeling on that trip. And I had surprised you with the boat when we went out on the boat. And that was kind of like a celebration of just getting through this sickness and all he had done for me. And it was such an amazing trip in so many ways, because it was, once again, coming through this long sick spell. And then I got a little bit better, was able to actually do it in the right time. And then we came home and hit 2020. And then that's the year we did this house renovation. Lots of stress with that. Your dad was diagnosed with cancer that year. Right,
that would have been in the fall or late summer, but yeah.
Both our parents. Yeah, that's the year my mom had surgery. Remember?
Right.
And so I was, you could only have 2 people going into the hospital taking turns, and I was one of them. So right in the middle of house renovations and the stress of my mom not being well, she had surgery on, she had a lump that was growing. We weren't sure if it was cancerous. So his dad wasn't well. He was flying out to be with his family some, help out on the farm. My mom wasn't doing well. I was with her in the hospital. We had this house completely torn apart. And somehow I was fine sick-wise through all that. But like we were saying, it often hits right after.
It was into 2021 when you got sick.
And then your dad passed away.
Right.
That was probably my worst flare. Not to take away from your dad's passing, but I guess the topic is the flare here. Anyway, it was a horrible time.
Right. Well, it's
very
the most
unexpected.
violent flare.
Yeah. That was the worst I think I've had. Anyway, and then I had went out to the funeral. We didn't expect him to pass. It was very, very unexpected. It was with COVID related, but he also had his cancer he had been dealing with. So Nolan and Xander had flown out to be with him a little bit, and we decided I'm going to stay back because I was sick. Oh, you packed already, huh?
Yeah, I got all the clothes you wanted. Bye!
I love you!
Like you!
And then suddenly he passed it almost as soon as Nolan got out
Pretty
there.
much the next day, yeah.
And so it was a horrible shock, but I was like, there's no way I'm not going. Flying just didn't feel like an option to me, so my brother loaned me his truck and we hooked up our camper, and I drove out. But anyway, that was my last major flare, and that one took quite some time to get through.
Yeah, it wasn't as long though as some of your other flares. Like
I got out of it in April, May.
Yeah, it was. You got out of it and then kind of never looked back. Like
that's kind of the timeline of flares when I was getting better. Now back to, was it 2019 that I was anointed?
Right.
And talking a little bit about that. Also, I forgot to mention, the reason I had wanted the camper was because I wanted to be able to get out and still have my home on wheels so that if I had to use the bathroom, I'd have it. That was the whole point of the camper renovation.
We're talking about 2 different campers though.
The first one, the
Toyota camper. Now we have a little trailer camper, and that's what you took out west for Dad's funeral.
Right.
Yeah.
So the first one ended up not being what we thought. It was so slow, and also it just wasn't what we quite wanted. And so we sold it, and then we found a really good deal on a small camper that an older couple was selling. And that's what we've had ever since. Made so many good memories, and it has been a lifesaver for me and my flares. Going places, going out to the funeral. I don't know what I would have done without it. So many different things. So anyway, that was the story behind the camper. Back to some of the things that started to change. My mom introduced me to colostrum. And I believe this was one of the key things that really, really helped me. First, I tried a certain brand she had told me about, and I didn't try it in depth. But then she said, you know what? I found out about this new colostrum someone was telling me about. It's this whole food. It looks amazing in comparison to the one I was using before. And so I decided to try it. I had researched into it, found out all the benefits. It's super good for gut health. It helps rebuild the lining of your gut wall. It helps with your immune system. It helps repair so many things. I actually even got to interview the doctor. His name is Dr. Kleinsmith behind the brand, Anovate. If you're interested, I'll have links below. Actually, let me just grab. I buy it in 2-pound bags. It's a powdered form. And this is bovine colostrum. It's the first milk that a calf gets. When I found out about this, I found out actually that doctors actually prescribe colostrum to IBD patients. I think it's a little bit different. Like I think they take some of the things out and put it into pill form. And it's a name, and Turagram or something. And they charge $500 a month for this prescription drug that's basically colostrum. And so doctors know it's good for your gut, and they're making a fortune off of it. It seems like, anyway, from what I can tell. Maybe there's something else in it that I'm not aware of. But I can get 2 pounds of it for $180 or something. It lasts me for months. And the reason I like this brand is because it's certified 6-hour, and I don't think there's any other brand that does this, which means they collect it within the first 6 hours of when a calf is born. They first give what the calf needs, and then they collect the rest. And this ensures that there is no milk coming in and diluting the colostrum. A lot of other brands will do it within like 24 to 48 hours, and by then a cow's milk can be coming in and you're only getting a watered down version. Yeah, it was when I started using that just seemed like a huge key. When I would get into a flare, I would mix that with other foods, with a 24-hour yogurt, which is anyway, I won't bore you guys with the details. That happened soon after the whole anointing thing, right around the same time, and it just felt like it was one of the big keys. It's not a cure-all, but I have heard a lot of other people too that have gotten so much help with it. Gut issues, other people it hasn't helped, but it seems like for some people it's like a missing key. I don't know. I've just heard some incredible stories from family members and from my own experience. So I always have it on hand. Anyway, and then I also focus on diet. I started on something called the GAPS SCD diet. It's kind of like the GAPS diet. Basically, you just eliminate all your food down to mostly just soft meats and build it from there. So whenever I would go into a flare, I would immediately go to that 24-hour yogurt, mix colostrum with it. And as soon as my stomach fell off, it just seems this was a soothing. There's just something about it that really worked for me, or at least it helped. I could tell it just really helped. It wasn't like I suddenly got out of my flare, but it was just a piece. Anyway, so with the food and that, it just seemed like things would settle a little bit and slowly, but it took weeks. It took a long time. Another big thing, obviously, is limiting your stress. I had to really learn how to cut back on stress, say no. Obviously, you can't manage your stress all the time. Sleep is a big one. He would get after me for this because I would work late into the night. I'm such a night owl, and I hate mornings. But just making sure you get sleep, good nutrition. Anyway, so it was a lot of those key things that I began to slowly learn, and it would help me get out of flares naturally. And so that's kind of how I got out of that flare in 2019. Mm-hmm. And then all of 2020 was the first time that I had a whole year without a flare. I think I had a real small one in there, but I was just like, man, I have this figured out. God is good. We're on track. And then 2021 hit. Then it was really bad. But, sorry, I'm just talking away here and you're about falling asleep. It's late. It's 11 o'clock. The children are in bed. We were filming 2 videos tonight.
So, I mean, basically, since you got better in 2021, it's been, you haven't had a flare since then.
I think I had a little one before I got pregnant with Lexi.
Okay.
There was a few small ones in there, but they weren't anything so much that it was life altering. Like I had some bleeding and some things. But yeah, pretty much it's been a clear road. But one thing I did want to say about the after I got COVID, my smell and my taste altered, and like proteins and the types of foods that normally would help me get out of a flare started tasting absolutely horrible. And I think that was a big reason I couldn't get out of that flare in 2021. Mm-hmm. All the food that I normally would eat tasted absolutely vile to me. And so I finally went back on prednisone for that one. Mm-hmm. Long story short, I have been doing super duper well. A few hiccups here and there. I can tell when I eat certain foods I don't feel well. So it's just been sort of like finding my way through it, finding what diet works well for me, making sure I take my colostrum especially when I start feeling off. That seemed to always kind of balance me a little bit, bring me back. I am coming up to 7 years now, this is 7 years since I was diagnosed. And I am supposed to go for a colonoscopy every 7 years because, actually now it's every 5 since I'm older, because I am at a higher risk for colon cancer. So I was really nervous. I was scheduled for one. I had read on a forum, I'm on a ulcerative colitis and Crohn's forum, and I had read that someone else had thought they were doing well and they went in for their checkup and here they found a bunch of issues. And so I was so worried. I'm like, what if I go in here and I think I'm doing well and they come back with like polyps growing that they think are cancerous, issues within, just different things that come up that are of concern that they're like, you really need to go back on medication of some kind. So I was worried. Went in for my test. And I had to switch doctors. My previous doctor was no longer really operating much. So it was a new doctor. And he was like, so what meds are you on? I'm like, I'm not on anything. He's like, what? And you're feeling okay? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, that is very rare that someone gets out of, because it's a chronic illness and they basically say there's no hope for you except for medication. And then I told him about colostrum. I said, I've been taking this colostrum. And then he looks at me, of course he probably thinks I'm Amish, and he's like, you live on a farm, don't you? I'm like, yeah. Do you get the colostrum from your cows? Is that where you get it? I'm like, no. We order it.
I don't think he's ever milked a cow, milked that colostrum out. But yeah, you would not want to drink that
straight from the cow.
Form. That would be terrible.
Yeah. But anyway, got my test. He comes in and I was just like bracing myself. And he's like, you are all clear. There are absolutely no issues. You're so squeaky clean that it was almost boring doing your test. I was like, you are kidding me. Hallelujah. It is an answer to prayer.
Yeah.
Like, how does that even work? Like, all the things we went through, and now everything is just clear, and they want me back in another 5 years to do another test. But he said, you just, whatever you're doing, you can continue doing that. And I could tell he was still in disbelief that we were doing this all naturally. So full credit to God.
That's for sure.
For his healing. And I'm still prone to flare-ups. It's not like I'm completely healed, that'll never happen, but I feel like from what I've been, like, so what, 2-3 years now without any major flares?
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten my life back compared to what we've been through. Mm-hmm. So God is so good. Now I need to focus on getting my hormones straightened and trying to get a little thinner like I was before. If that's ever possible. Anyway, I know that if you're on a health journey, it can be super lonely. A lot of people just don't understand. Sometimes they feel it. You get the feeling that they look at you and think like, oh, get over it. You're just overplaying something. Or you just feel like you're alone. They don't understand. They just go on with your life and there you are existing. And there's so many people dealing with so many things. And a lot of silent sufferers. You might look at someone and you think that they look healthy and they're not. They have major issues going on in their life. So if that's you, my heart really goes out to you because I know what it's like. And it is horrible. And so yeah, just sharing my story to maybe give you some hope. For me, it was definitely a long road of trying to figure it out, but I'm blessed that it only took 3 years, whatever it was, till we got to where we are. And maybe there's more dark roads ahead that I suddenly can't figure things out and this isn't working. But for now, it's been working amazingly. And I'm just beyond grateful because there for a while, I wasn't sure if we'd ever have a life again where I could just go out and live without being tied to a bathroom pretty much all my life. Anyway, we are both getting tired.
I promise I'm not as sleepy as I look.
Yeah, sorry. We've been talking for quite some time.
Staring vacantly into the camera.
We probably shouldn't have shot 2 videos back to back. I think we've been shooting now for 2 hours, so that's a lot of talking. But anyway, thanks for being here. I hope you got something out of it. And I hope your Thanksgiving was amazing. We'll see you guys next time. Bye. There was one thing I was going to mention that I forgot to mention in our podcast. Do you remember that when I was so sick, what shows I would watch?
Oh.
Come on, you remember. I would sit down.
Slipping my mind right now.
All right, so when I was so sick, by the way, I could hardly eat. Like, you'd be so famished, but as soon as you ate, it felt like you were, like, digesting knives. And by the way, I would fluctuate weight. Like, if I would be in a flare, I could, like, lose 10, 20, 30 pounds. And then you get out of a flare, and then it was almost like a starving person coming back out, and you would just eat and eat and eat, and your body would just, like, recover and bloom. And then it's just, like, this cycle. But anyway, I would get such a bang out of watching these eating competitions.
Oh, right. I do remember that.
And it was so gross. Like, who wants to watch someone inhale food? I'm talking about platters of food. You remember that guy I would watch?
Yeah.
He had a big beard, and he was very skinny. And he would sit down to these challenges and eat mounds of food. Like, I'm talking mounds of food, plate after plate after plate. And I would just sit and watch this and watch. I was so hungry, and I would just dream of eating pizza. Anyway, that was a low. Just, he would make fun of me when I did that. Remember that?
I do. I also remember some of the research you did into different healing methods.
Oh, please stop.
Anyway, we won't talk about them, but they're funny to talk about now between the two of us.
Okay,
but
yeah.
I had to act like the caring husband that was not saying this is ridiculous, we shouldn't do this, and yet try to tell her that this is ridiculous and we shouldn't do this, and without putting it in those words.
Well, the thing is,
I understand how you were feeling. You wanted to be healed, and like anything, we try anything.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty bad.
It's not a slam on you or your character at all. It's just.
Well, it truly goes.
I remember how funny some of them were, but yeah.
Some of them I really was grasping for straws. The thing is, I realize now why they say they pray, like when people pray on the sick and the elderly. Is that the saying?
Pray, you mean like not pray over, but like
pray as in
P-R-E-Y.
Yeah. Like advertisements, people trying to get, and it's true when you're sick, like, and you just kind of lose your rational thinking. Right. You're so desperate for an answer that you begin to believe things that in your sane mind you would never believe, but you're just desperate. I mean, you're so sick, there's no relief, there's nothing. You're like, there has to be an answer, and you start believing things. And it's why some of these people can make so much money off of brands that just claim this is a cure-all, this will cure you, and yada yada yada. And it's sad. It really is sad. But I was in that space.
Or lighters that say that they're electric lighters and they're not, like I just bought. Anyway, which is a scam. Anyway.
He got suckered into an ad that was completely false. So.
It's a good lighter. It's just not electric.
Anyway, that was just a little insertion there.